we should have the formation of a happy path application that has landmines and pitfalls all over the place. That's okay. I'm not super worried about that. We need to be able to build up these things iteratively. It's nice to be able to start at the beginning and do everything perfectly. It's okay, especially in virtual endeavors like code, to come back and clean some stuff up as you go. I don't think it actually takes any longer to build it this way, but it certainly gives you less things to think about at once. So hopefully by now, before you go and continue on, you should have an application that does all the basic things we saw. It's going to ask the question and go through and get data from each of the three areas. If you as a user type it in perfectly, it should be working. If you don't have all that happening, adding validation might screw you up. Might have too many things working at once. If you're having an issue, everything seems to be working right, but the data you're typing in isn't working right, my bet is your issues around not using next line or making overly too much use of next int. And we'll address that a little bit here. So you can always start with just pulling in strings, and if you have the idea of getting in strings, that's fine. Again, you always have the option to build what I'm building here. The source code for what we've built up till now is there in 1.6 is the file name. You can go back and look at that. And so I want you to feel like at this point before you continue on, you should have a grasp of what's happening and hopefully a working application. At least this demo, if not your own working application. So I'm going to go back to the top here. Let's start with the very first thing. So the next line inside of here. So I'm going to go ask the user for an input. In command line, I'm going to get some information, but what do I do if the user doesn't give me the right information? What if I put in nothing? Well, at this point it says please choose again and says null. The default action, if it don't pick 1, 2, or 3, is to do whatever I want to down here. If I say please choose again, the application ends at that point. So in all likelihood, if I want the application not to just, any user input just to die, I have to give them an opportunity to do it again. In a GUI application that you'll build next term, the application starts up and it sits there and runs, and it continues to run until the user specifically closes it. A command line application also runs until, instead of the user choosing to close it, until it runs out of lines of code. And so every time you hit the end of a sequence, there's a chance the program will end unless you go back. And the only way we can go back really in Java is through a loop. So every time we get an input, we have to consider looping. And so we're going to start at the top level. When I start my application, I'm going to go ask for a person. I'm basically going to go ask, I'm going to go, so what type of customer are you? I'm going to go ask this information. If I don't get the information I want to, I probably have to ask for it again. I might want to ask for it again even with everything that's going to happen. I mean, there might be some other sequences inside of here, but let's just start with the most basic loop. So I'm going to do a while loop. I'm going to loop forever. True. And then I want to make sure I take everything I want and tab it over to make sure I can really see the white space. You can see in NetBeans, I get the little dotted lines, little grayish dotted lines that puts it into there. And my application should not end until I get my person object here. And guess what? Once I put my loop inside of there, printing out my person object isn't happy anymore, and so it's outside of this. So I have two options. This is a little bit of design choice inside of here. For now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it up top. So I know my goal is to get a person. I'm going to loop until I get a person, and then I'm going to print out that person at the end. Why is this not liking it? Unreachable statement. Oh, yeah. Because right now I say loop forever, and I have no way of ever breaking this guy. I never leave out of that, out of the loop. So at this point, I need to break out of my loop, and I need to be able to do more. Need to do more validation on top of this than what I'm just saying right at this moment. But let's just start with breaking out of the loop. If P is equal to null, then I want to continue. So if P is not equal to null, then I can break. All right, so this fixes my loop problem. So what we're saying is I have my command line helper, based off the input they have, if it was garbage, then P will be null, and it'll loop around again. If it was filled by one of these guys, P is no longer null, and then I can print it out. It's baby steps, baby steps. It's not necessarily the full application, but for our application, we're going to go get one of these things. It's going to allow us to get one of these things at this point. So run. What type of user am I? I'm garbage user. Oh, please choose again. What type of customer are you? I'm a guest. IP address, number of times I visited, and then my application closes because I get it and I close out. So that's a good little loop I have going on right here. That's the first level of validation that you need to understand, is looping to ask a user a question multiple times. The design of that loop is going to be variable based off what you have going on. I want to point out I put the break statement down here because I had a break statement right here. So really, once I get this, once I know I get this, I could break out of my loop at this point. But I can't say break. I'd have to say break out of the loop. Down here, when I say a break, I'm not breaking out of the switch statement. I'm breaking out of the loop itself right here. Where right now, when I say break here, I'm breaking out of the switch statement. There actually is a way around this. You can actually name this loop up here. And so I can name this loop of get valid input right here. And you just give it a text name, whatever text name you want to, and a colon. And then up here, I could say break get valid input. At that point, it would allow me to break out, and this break wouldn't be necessary anymore. I can actually take that break out. And that would say break out of the whole loop inside of that. That's a valid code segment. It's not really what I'm here to teach you. It's kind of an interesting little side note of Java that you can do this. You can name loops. You can break out of them from anywhere. And in this case, I actually like the idea of I fill the object, and then if it's not valid, I break, because this is going to fit into what I want to do next within this. The first thing, though, and maybe you actually should pause this video right now and go make it happen, is just the loop is used to go ask the user until you get a valid input in a command line. And it could get into a loop where the user just is stuck. If they don't know, if they can't figure out how to give you a valid input, maybe they're just stuck right there. So you have to be careful of the design. You might want to add in some checks that, hey, if I loop 10 times, the user still hasn't got it. Maybe I ask them, are you sure you want to keep doing this? You want to quit? All that stuff is stuff that you would have to code in. By default, it's going to continue this loop until the user types a 1, a 2, or a 3. Exactly a 1, a 2, or a 3. Not 1 space, not 2 space, anything like that. It's going to be exactly a 1 or 2 or 3. If it did an if statement, I could have a little bit more flexibility, but right now, they have to type a 1, a 2, or a 3. All right. What your application is asking for you to do is a little bit more advanced than just get it one time. It's essentially asking you to keep looping until the user says quit, and then keep getting the objects within that. So to that effect, you'd have to have additional check inside of there, 1, 2, 3, or 4 to quit, or something like that. Some of you have implemented it that way. Let me tell you, I don't care about that level of expertise. At this point, if you build something that can input one user, one account in your case, get that one account and spit it out, that's good enough. If you want to do something fancier where you get into looping through and tracking multiples and stuff like that, that's your call as well. But I will be happy with your assignment if you just have a loop that validates it, says 1, 2, or 3, and then spits it out the 1 at the end. And so this code will work just fine for that.